Hi guys, this is probably the third time I have tried recording this video. I'm having such a hard time keeping myself together through this and keeping things concise and condensed, so please bear with me while I share this story. I first want to acknowledge the insane amount of support and love I have received from thousands to millions of you from sharing the first part of this story. I hate sharing what I'm about to share. I really want to make that clear, because the love I had for this human is not synonymous with this pattern of destructive behavior that happened over the course of 4 years. There are exceptions, because when you put your life and innocent people's lives in danger, I have a problem with that. I also have a problem with racism and the refusal to acknowledge the extent of the racial slurs that have been used. I have a problem when I am put second in my own marriage. After the divorce, I sought out legal advice and ended up creating a really firm document of documented times that she would either be drinking and driving, get into a vehicle with someone else that was drinking and driving, had inappropriate relationships with friends and strangers, and outwardly disrespected my sobriety. I have about a 5-6 page document with dates, times, videos, pictures, witness testimonies, and that might sound batshit crazy, but I was told repeatedly that I never did that when I know that it happened. It's really important to understand the backstory and the depth of these behaviors, because it led to the ending of our marriage. It was not the only factor, but for me, it was the biggest factor. I also want to preface, for those that don't know, I have been sober for almost 5 years, and when we entered this relationship, she was aware of this. I know I have prefaced this in my first video that I made, but I have my own fair share of faults here, and every piece of information I am about to share with you, I am guilty of not leaving. Before I get into the actual period of time where we had our active decision to separate and our active divorce proceedings, I want you to know where I was coming from and the behavior that I was subjected to for 4 years. We met on TikTok and we had decided to meet halfway for the first time. The day before, she drove down to meet me and told me that she loved me. She had intimate relations with a man. I did not know of what extent or that even had happened for a 1.5 years later. So from the start, the relationship had no foundation other than a foundation of deceitfulness, lies, dishonesty, and cheating. If I would have known that from the beginning, there would have been no meeting. Right from the start, the promise of, I'm never going to get that drunk, I'm never going to drink like that again, it started. That narrative started. For months following, we did long distance for about 1 year. I can't tell you the number of occurrences where, one, she was vulgar and mean. October of 2020, where she had gotten so intoxicated and was grinding and dancing provocatively on her friends. Everybody has their own boundaries and standards in a relationship, but that kind of physical behavior is a boundary cross to me. Also then, continuously repeated times where she was drinking and driving. I should have left. These concerns were addressed, and I'm not diagnosing anybody, but she was rooted in some severe avoidant tendencies. Every single time I addressed this concern and I said, hey, this is a problem. The drinking is a problem. It's affecting me. It's affecting you. It's affecting us. There was never any true dignified value held for my concerns. They were seen as disagreements. I can't tell you how dismissive and hurtful that felt, because it just felt like my concerns held no validity to her. I really did fall victim to the promise of, please give me another chance, I'm gonna get better. In the summer of 2021, where she had gone out with a close friend of mine and she came home extremely intoxicated and had tried touching me, even though I had said I did not want to be touched, because first of all, she reeked of liquor. She was extremely inhibited, and I have been raped by men, and this felt very triggering to me, and it felt that I had to keep repeating myself, like, no, no, no. We move into the summer of 2022, and the drinking had considerably escalated. Got to a point, and I know all my friends can vouch for this because they were the biggest supporters that I had. I felt like a tape recorder. I can't tell you how many nights I laid in bed just riddled with anxiety and sadness because I was alone. And one could argue that, yeah, I could have gone out with her. I could have gone out to the bars. But being in those environments are very triggering for me. A bit of a trigger warning for this story because it's upsetting for me. So it might be upsetting for someone else. But this was probably the most hostile encounter I had with her. We were leaving a local bar in Rochester, and she was very angry at me to the point where she was screaming at me in the car, and I had to pull over on the side of the road because I couldn't console myself. I was so upset and so worked up. I sat there and cried as she screamed at me and she yelled at me. I was able to finally gather myself, gather my feelings, and I drove us home. And I remember sitting on the couch with my hands in my face and just hearing her scream at me. And I kept saying over and over again, can we please talk about this tomorrow when you're sober? Can we please? Like, please. At this point, I also think I was so deeply insecure that I didn't think I would ever find someone else who would love me. And I think that kept me captive, that held me hostage, that thought of, I'm never gonna find someone else, this is the best I will get. If you feel that you deserve better, then you do. She was in a different state and had brought another queer girl back to her hotel room. Again, I didn't even know that this had happened until she had come home. And then I was told that seemed to have happened a lot, where the information was shared much later on. The reasoning behind this was that the girl had drank too much and she was going to drive home, so she brought her back to her hotel room. We were engaged, and my first thought was, it's not your responsibility to take care of a stranger. And second of all, there are Ubers, Lyfts, taxis, any kind of public transportation that this person could have used. There was no need to bring her back to your hotel room. Our wedding. We did not have a traditional wedding. We had a private ceremony and then a larger party at the end of the month. And the reception, the party, was probably one of the worst nights of my life. I left crying. 2 of my very best friends brought me home. Her and I hardly spent any time together the entire night. She was heavily intoxicated the entire night. Again, she says otherwise, so it's her storyline that her friends had brought drugs. Your best friend's partner is sober. I think it's maybe a little disrespectful to bring drugs to their wedding. But then again, that really goes back to not being defended and always being put second in the relationship. Her friends were always a priority to her, and I know that an argument that she brings up is that I was controlling and I tried to control those friendships. And if she feels that way and felt that way, I'm deeply apologetic. That was never my stance. That was never my position. However, I really didn't like engaging with people that actively disrespected my sobriety. After the wedding party ended, again, I had gone home early to address the cats, deal with the cats, and she eventually came home like an hour or 2 hours later and acknowledged me briefly, but then went directly into the guest bedroom and laid on the bed cuddling her friends. I will never forget the look on my 2 best friends' faces while we were sitting on the couch. They were just in utter disbelief. They were just like, how did that just happen? 4 years of justifying her behavior and 4 years of making excuses led up to this one moment of, wow, I deserved a lot better. Both clearly, evidently deserved differently. After the wedding, things really tanked. We were hardly intimate. I was begging for her attention. I would literally beg her to be intimate with me. And for someone that has pretty extensive sexual trauma, to then beg for any type of physical touch or encounter felt very almost dissociative for me, because I was like, I'm asking for this when I've got this history, but this is also my wife. I want her to love me, but I don't want her to love me while she's under the influence. I don't want that. She had begun spending more and more time with friends, going out more and more during the week, during the weekends, and any time that she was home, I just wanted to spend time with her. So I felt like I couldn't leave the house because I just wanted to like spend time with her. I could only address the same problem so many times. And I think I had addressed it so many times that, again, I don't want to speak for her. I will never speak for her, but I'm sure she was really sick of it. And I'm sure she felt that I was controlling. And I don't even know if she knows this, but it genuinely was coming from a place of wanting to spend time with her. I was so lonely in my marriage. So many evenings, I would be so excited for her to come home from work. I would have dinner all made. I'd have the house cleaned. Emily was set. I was like, let's play a game. Like, let's watch TV. And she would always say, I just can't be here. I just can't sit around and stay at home. Like, I want to go out with my friends. And the rejection, the constant rejection of just, and then to be rejected, you know, intimately, it was awful. Simultaneously, I was definitely not giving her what she needed. So there's such a strong disconnect here where I feel neglected, but then I also know I wasn't showing up for her in the ways that I could have as a wife. Like, maybe I should have played more sports with her. Maybe I should have gone to the bars. I don't know. But I had gotten to a point where I had repeated myself so many times that I had nothing else left to say. So we move into December of 2023, and this was where things just catapulted for the worst. He had created a friendship with this fellow queer girl in our community, and she had been spending an extensive amount of time with this person. She had a tendency that when she met a friend, she would cling to them very quickly and spend enormous amounts of time with them. Even though they weren't necessarily genuinely good people, it didn't matter. She found a connection and would just spend hours and hours. That's my little foster kitten. Hi, Pippin. Spend hours and hours of time with these people. I had grown suspicious of the relationship. I felt that there was something happening. Again, I was, she swore up and down and left and right that nothing had transpired, nothing had happened. I ended up looking through her computer and her phone, which that's horrible that I did. Horrible. Should have never done that. It was not the first time I did that. That's awful. Truly terrible. I'm deeply apologetic for that behavior. That's really poor behavior on my part and a big mistake, a big violation of privacy and trust. I did find enough proof that made me feel very uncomfortable. I approached her with this. I said, this person makes me feel uncomfortable. I would prefer if you ended this friendship, if you could end this relationship. As your wife, it's not comfortable for me. And that didn't happen. The friendship continued to pursue and it continued to develop. And then this is where I became very petty, because I said, well, if she gets to have a friendship like this, then I want to have a friendship like this. And I went ahead and found one. I became very close with this wonderful human friends. That is our relationship. That's what it was, and that's what it has always been, friends. We connected very quickly and developed a really cool friendship. In January, I ended up going on a trip to Hawaii. During this trip, our friendship developed into something a bit more. And the very first thing that I did when I got home was I told my wife. I said, hey, this person that I've become friends with has expressed that they have feelings for me, and it's important for me to tell you this because I don't know how I feel right now. I am confused because this person has treated me with more respect, kindness, attention, validation than you have in months. I know this now, that her reaction should have never happened. This was not an appropriate response to someone coming to their partner with an open heart, honesty, and their vulnerability. She ran away. She couldn't handle it. She couldn't fathom that I had quote unquote done something wrong. The very first time I had done something quote unquote wrong was the end. One time I came to her and I said, look, something's got to change here because you're not giving me what I need. It was the end. We had tried to go to therapy a few times, but someone who's rooted so deeply in avoidant tendencies has no capacity to take any ownership or accountability for any of their actions. All she could do was accept the role of a victim. And the people she surrounded herself with did no justice for her. They only encouraged that mindset and that position. Even our own therapist had sat down with the both of us and said, look, this narrative of cheating is a fallacy. It's not rooted in reality, it's rooted in an emotional experience. That really, I guess, didn't matter to her. When you have people around you encouraging something that's really not reality, it's very hard to unsee it. But to listen to your friends over your wife, that's just not it. I had asked her, I said, hey, I think I need some space. I think I need some time to really think about what I deserve, because I think I actually deserve more than what you're offering me. And you are not fighting for this relationship at all. And I'm not saying that it was just her responsibility to fight, but I look back and think all the times that I fought so hard to stay in a relationship that really negatively impacted my health, my sobriety, and my overall well-being. So the one time I had asked for something, it wasn't given. I also do want to make note that she felt I had blindsided her, that I came back from my trip in January and all of a sudden didn't want to be with her anymore and all of a sudden blindsided her. When you ignore someone's concerns for 4 years and then also act as if they are just disagreements, of course you're going to feel blindsided when the truth finally catches up with you. I had endured too much, so much, that I had reached my breaking point. And in turn, that was poor on me, because I should have walked away much sooner. Maybe I need to take all responsibility for that. And if that's the case, then I will. There was also a point, I do want to make note of this because I'm no innocent, perfect person. I made so many mistakes in this relationship. There were so many times where I communicated in a very aggressive, hostile way to her. There were many times that there were sides of me that were brought out that were very possessive, very jealous. That's a really ugly side to me, and that is not who I am as a person, and that really truly does not define me. And I'm deeply aware and I'm deeply apologetic for behaving that way and treating her in that way. And maybe some of these behaviors were rooted in resentment because she was angry that she moved here, maybe angry that we had Emily. I don't really know. I just don't know. There was a point when we were trying to figure things out where she had asked me to please stop communicating with this friend. And I said, okay, I'll stop communicating with them. I will block them as you wish. I blocked them for a day maybe, and then unblocked them. And I had lied to her. I had openly lied. That was a huge violation of trust. And I justified it as, well, she didn't block that girl that she was friends with when I asked. So why would I block? You know, it just got to a point of like these petty interactions that just really weren't reflective of my character. We ended up having a therapy session in which she had asked for a divorce, and shortly after brought legal representation to the table and served me settlement papers. Also important to highlight that so much of this came to light after the separation. I wasn't even fully cognizant of how extensive this harmful behavior was, the drinking and the driving. I also wasn't aware of how extensive her racist past was. I should have left when I knew that that word had come out of her mouth once. I was never with her when she was actively using the derogatory language, but she had used it up until high school, an age old enough to know that you don't use that language. And you might be wondering, well, why am I sharing this? Because it's important. That's important. And every time someone tries to bring it up to her, she blocks them and doesn't acknowledge it. But that is so important to know. I knew a small amount, and I had even threatened her with, I will share this, when it never really was a threat because I was going to share it anyways, because here I am. She appears so different than what she actually is, and that goes the same for me. Which leads me to my next point, that social media is such a facade. We had a lot of good moments, but none of you would have ever known what was happening behind closed doors. I don't even really think my friends knew just how bad it was. I don't even think I knew how bad it was until I left. Don't know how many times I have to say this or make it clear, but I hurt her in just as many ways. I'm deeply aware that I have caused her pain and suffering from my actions. If she were to come on here one day and call me out for all of my behaviors, I'll sit right there and say, yeah, you're right, I did do that, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Now, I can't be certain that they'd all be truthful, but I can be certain that I would take accountability when needed, because I'm not necessarily proud of the person that I was with her for all those 4 years. A really, really ugly side of me came out. Also, one more point I really wanted to make, and that was in regards to our fertility journey. We were in the process of going through fertility appointments, and one thing I did say to her at the end was that I didn't want to have children with her. How was I going to have kids with someone who was never home? How was I going to have kids with someone who didn't defend me when it came to their homophobic parents? How could I have a child when they told me that Emily would no longer be the priority? Emily will always be my priority. The last piece I will mention is her parents. I don't know why this new narrative that she has spun now on social media, that her parents have been accepting and loving and open to her sexuality. I don't know why she is blatantly lying to millions of you. Because her parents were not supportive. They were horrible. And I was on the direct receiving end of that homophobia for years. That is a video for another time, because there is a plethora of information and experiences that are involved there. But I think that's it. This is my piece, and this is my truth, and this is what happened. This is my version of events. This is my story, my experience, and she will never be able to take that away from me. She will never be able to rewrite it for me. Not anymore. I will no longer ever think that I'm crazy. I will no longer subject myself to that. Sharing my truth sets me free. And most of the internet thinks that I just seek attention and drag this out. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but selfishly, this is for me. This is my closure, and now I can close this chapter. Thank you guys so much for being here, listening, loving me, loving Emily. I love you guys.